Welcome, guys. We're here with Sarita Dua. Sarita, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
So you're probably watching this because you're considering coaching with Sarita, or maybe you're considering our organization and you'd like to find out a little bit more about who we are and our coaches. And we have one of our greats with us today, Sarita. If you wouldn't mind, why don't you share with us just a little bit about kind of like your backstory? And I know you just got done, by the way, we are on stage at one of our events. So You just got done keynoting this morning's session, so kudos to you. And she got a standing ovation, which was cool.
It was wonderful.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your backstory of how you got into real estate and what your real estate path has been so far? Let's start there.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Jeff. So my real estate gig has been sort of my second full-time career. So I started out as an electrical engineer out of college, and I actually was in high tech. I was in high tech sales, marketing, biz dev, product management, and I loved it. 14 years of tech, 7 at a large company, and then 7 at startups. Never thought I'd actually get into real estate. But
I mean, by the way, that's like an oxymoron, right? Engineer and sales,
right? Exactly. And actually,
opposite.
It's interesting, right? If you actually have the tech background, but you can communicate, I noticed it was actually a small sliver of people who could do both.
Yeah,
so I actually did gravitate to how can you save the client time or money, right? And just translate it a little bit. So I didn't like dream about houses or architecture, but I had 2 little ones and I had a husband who traveled all the time, and one of us sort of had to get off the hamster wheel and like do something. And so my husband's like, hey, why don't you become a realtor or do something? And it wasn't even real estate. I was looking at real estate, financial planning, insurance, but I needed something where I can be my own boss. And the reason I made the move instead of him is because he actually loved his job, and I got to the point where I wasn't loving tech. And so I just took matters into my own hands. So to fast forward, I've been a realtor for 19 years now.
We got in around the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
I was May of 03.
Okay, I got licensed in 03 and I started like the very beginning of 04.
Beat you.
Yes, you did. You are my senior.
Therefore, I'm more experienced.
So we have very similar timeline, and we've seen all the market changes, right? And I've been at 3 different brokerages, and about the first 8 years I was on my own, and then I formed a small team, and I've had that team since 2010.
One of the first things I ever remember about you, and I think you were being interviewed on stage, but it sticks in my mind, ask Sarita.
That's right.
Ask Sarita. You were talking about your brand and how you launched that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is so funny. I was that nerd. I mean, I was an engineer, and and you guys know that I love education. I wrote a business plan for real estate before I started, and I came up with this idea of Ask Sarita, because Sarita is such a name that you're spelling it all the time. So it's like, my thought was, hey, do you have any questions about real estate? Ask Sarita, big or small. Ask me. And it's been really great. I actually got the domain name before I even started. And I've become, one of my strengths and what I love about the brand is that I'm a connector, right? If you're my client and you need a hardwood guy,
just ask me anyway.
Ask me, and then, and by the way, the more I learn that you need a hardwood person and a painter and maybe a mover, hey, maybe you're selling your house, let's talk. Right?
That's right.
By being that connector, even post-transaction, I get to stay in my clients' lives. And I become a resource for them. So that's how that started.
Love that. And you mentioned education, which, by the way, if I'm considering coaching with you, I would look at education, of course. I would look at your experience. I would look at your results. I would look at the things that you've done. But one of the things that you're probably super proud of is your most recent task. Can you share us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm a proud graduate of MIT. I got my Executive MBA in May of 2020.
And what did that look like? Because, I mean, nothing against community colleges or small universities, but I've done the research on getting an MBA, and it's, a couple weekends here and there, and, a few hours and a few books, and you got it, right? A little different for you. Can you tell us what your journey was?
Yeah, it was a very intense program. I had already gotten my engineering degree, and I actually, embarrassingly, had an MBA from way back when. But the truth is, I just love learning, and MIT's always been a dream school of mine. This is a pretty intense program. It was a 20-month program involving 26 weekend trips from Portland to Boston. 26
trips in 20 months?
20 months, plus 5 one-week modules on top of that.
From Portland, Oregon to
Boston, Mass. Cambridge.
That's like a 5.5-hour flight.
It is, and it involves travel, it involves hotel, and people were coming, forget Portland, they were coming from all over the world. But I loved it. MIT is so quant based, and so essentially I would have 2 notebooks because everything had an equation. Some of my classes, even marketing, marketing you would think is in general like it's messaging, it's your it's storytelling. We had math equations on the lifetime value of our customer.
Sure.
So, but what I was doing is I was taking notes in class, and then I was taking other notes right there over the weekend on how can I apply it to my business.
Yes, I
was
love
writing
that.
papers on how to get reviews, how to optimize operations. So I was thinking already,
You
how
were in
can
the
I
mode.
apply it? Yeah, it was really amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, I've known you for a long time now. We've been in separate mastermind groups together. We've been at conferences together. I mean, we've gotten to know each other very well. And we invited you to our coaches retreat. Of course, well, actually, before I get to that, how did you? What was it about Glover U that caused you to say, you know what? Aside from being a lifelong learner, because that's an easy answer.
Right.
What was it that? Because you could go be a lifelong learner anywhere. Why did you choose us?
Well, there's a comfort, Jeff, that I got. I checked out your events. First of all, you're very open and you shared a lot of your information with us with no strings attached.
Yeah.
Whether it's webinars, whether it's resources on the website, on the Facebook page.
Yep.
I remember even during the pandemic, you were just doing like, this is what I'm telling my team. I'm going to tell you.
Here it is.
This is the business plan I'm doing for my team. You guys can have it.
Yeah.
So there was this openness with no strings attached. So I love that. I've gone to, now this is I think my 3rd summit, and I've been to 1 retreat, and it feels like a family. And I think one of the things I love the most and what sets you guys apart from other organizations is something you and I have in common. You're in the trenches.
Every
You're
day.
in production, and I am too, and I'm never gonna leave it.
I stepped out of our dinner this week to go do an offer consultation for a buyer, right? I mean,
but because of that, it's not because you're like, hey, I want to do everything.
Yeah.
It keeps you in touch with the client. It keeps you in touch with the market.
That's right.
You're giving advice that you're like learning. You're literally learning it yourself and applying it
as we go,
real time.
That's
yeah,
right.
and that's one of the things that I could really relate to.
Yeah. Good. And so obviously, you know, we had noticed you coming to our events, and I've thought very highly of you and your business anyway. So you had an opportunity to speak on one of our stages, and we interviewed you, and of course, you made a huge impact on our audiences. And going back to October of last year, we had a coaches retreat that you got invited to.
Right.
And what was that experience like for you?
You know, it was really good. I'm actually kind of mad at you because I feel like maybe you did this by design, but it was a great event. It was a special invite. It was a limited number of people. It was in a golden envelope. I remember getting it.
Yep.
And as you know, I'm from Michigan, and so I'm thinking, okay, this thing's in Detroit. I'm going to go see my parents. I don't know what's going on. It was a bit stealth. I didn't know what to expect.
Yep.
So I show up. It was a day and a half or 2 days of real training in terms of, it was actually leadership training, to be honest.
That's what it was.
With no strings again. I mean, it was your coaches and you were training your coaches, but you were also, like, you gave us a presentation on just how to do an effective speech.
Yes.
And I took some of that material and I used it because I was speaking,
that's
you
right.
know, in a couple weeks
And
after
by the way, that material, whether you're standing on a platform and speaking or going on a listing appointment, it's the same.
Right, or leading your team meeting,
that's right? Yes.
So I had no intention really of like we were flirting with the idea of perhaps becoming, at some point I wanted to become a coach. I had some coaching experience and I really believe in coaching. But that event made me realize that this was like where I wanted to be. And so that was what accelerated my journey to becoming a coach and sitting here today.
Yep. And you didn't know while you were there was probably 30, 35 of us that got, or 35 very successful individuals from all over the country that got invited to that, and only 2 were selected. Now, of course, as you said, yes, we did not have, our goal was first and foremost, whether we're going to reach out to them or not afterwards, we want them to understand that we were doing this because of the impact that they're having in their communities.
Right.
And at the same time, we knew that a handful would show up and show up in a big way in terms of the way they carried themselves, the questions that they asked, and just, you know, getting to know you better. It was an easy decision to say, let's reach out to her and get her as part of the group.
Thank you. It's really an honor though, and and what I also liked is what you shared with us as sort of being outsiders at that event, and what you shared internally, it's the same. Like, you don't have 2 versions of yourself, and I love that. It's just very open book.
So if I'm considering coaching with you, why should I coach with you?
You know, it really boils down to kind of finding, obviously, the right fit. like I mentioned, I love learning. I love understanding what makes people tick.
Yeah.
Understanding where they're excelling and what challenges they may be having.
Yep.
One of the topics I was fortunate enough to speak on is how do you balance your life and where are your priorities, and if you are doing great at work, like what are the other parts of your life that you're perhaps struggling with. I run a profitable team that's very small. We use showing agents. We're very strong in a market as well with multiple offers. So if it's skills based as well, I feel like I can, again, being that Ask Sarita resource, being that connector, listening, understanding what the needs are, and finding resources and a match.
There are probably not many things that you haven't experienced or haven't learned, and I think that one of the advantages that clients that coach with you have is they get to take advantage of all of the time and energy and resources and sacrifices you made to get that education, to get that information, to have that production, to fail, to start over again, right? To go through those processes. They're the benefactors of that.
Well, and Jeff, you and I, thank you for the compliments with regards to the education and the experience, but you and I have also just seen it all, right? Like sitting here getting our license in 03, right? We've seen down markets, we've
Good
seen
market, bad
markets,
no
and
market.
we know that things are going to be changing again, and you got to have that skill set sharp at all times and skate to where the puck's going.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, hey, I am so honored to have you on the team. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure.